Happy New Comic Book Day, geeks, and welcome to issue 40 of the Script Heroes podcast.
The show where we bring you comic news, book reviews, and industry blues. My name is Joseph Jasonowski, and I am the writer of Janitor Hero, Cutting Carly, and the Cryptoverse.
And I'm Katie Markham, scripter of the Rusty Robot Country Club and ghostwriter extraordinaire. We have some awesome polls to talk about today. We're coming back for number 2 of Arkham Horror, The Terror at the End of Time, number 5 of Rook Exodus, number 5 of The Boy Wonder, and 2 new number 1s with Minor Arcana and Prairie Gods.
That's right, and if you enjoy any of those reviews or anything else in today's episode, you can follow the pod on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at the handle Script Heroes Pod. Where you can find my personal socials at JJAZ1111.
And I'm on all socials at Katie Markham Pro.
And now, let's move on to the news. So on a pretty sparse news week, we're going to start with a little goof from DC Comics. Yeah, and this is something that I think has happened a lot with Marvel, and I don't know if it's happened with DC as much. But anyway.
Did they lose an entire truck full of a comic book?
They did not.
Throwback to Black Panther, Ultimate Black Panther number 1.
No, this is a goof that happened on I think I think around the same time from Marvel on some of their X-Men books. But now we're talking about DC doing it on a Batman book. So this is Batman issue 153, which has recently been solicited, and apparently DC's going back with the. I assume you've heard DC's going back to the Bullet logo. Maybe you haven't heard that.
I have not heard. Do I have any DC books with me right now? What? I guess I thought of this as the Bullet logo because it looks like the bottom of a bullet.
It's the one that like really looks like the bottom of a bullet with like the stars.
Love that! I'm here for this.
Yeah.
Like
so
the actual classic DC logo.
Yeah. So there we got some old news within the new news, but so I guess with that they're going back to legacy numbering on a bunch of the books.
Oh,
and I guess you can see where this is going.
Yeah,
which is the first issue of Batman they've solicited with legacy numberings is issue 153. Which has been solicited as legacy, or on the cover you can see is listed as legacy 919. But as a bunch of people have kind of, I guess, looked at this and looked at the last issues that have had legacy numberings on it and count things out, apparently it's supposed to be legacy number 918, and botched it on the first one.
And I'm Batman of all of them. So first off, I would like to levy my fear, but also my awe for the people who would go back and count all of the Batman issues to make sure they got the right one.
Well, they just have to count from the last one that has legacy numbering on them.
But that's still like over 100 issues.
It's like 18 from issue 900.
Oh, they did have issue 900.
So
okay,
yeah, it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
No way, they're going back to like.
No, it's not that bad. Yeah, so they didn't have to count that.
That's pretty silly.
If that makes you feel a little bit less.
Did you? I am far less awestruck and far less afraid of them. But did you see any like reasons why, like something they might have counted or not counted?
No, this happens a lot. Like Marvel does this all the time. Like with the legacy numberings, I constantly see them like doing the same legacy numbering like 2 issues in a row or something like that. I don't understand why that's so much easier for them to fuck up than the actual number on the book. Like it's the same thing.
Yeah,
both just need to count up 1. I guess this actually makes a little bit more sense than when like Marvel fucks it up when they've already been doing it, because at least this is like going back to it for the first time, so somebody had to count it out instead of just going up 1. Like, listen, I'm not saying it should happen. I'm just saying it's a little bit more reasonable than not being able to add 1 to like the previous book.
Going back for the first time, but also having just had Legacy issue 900.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not reasonable. It's just better than not taking a number up 1 correctly.
Fair enough. Yes.
We're comparing very sad things. This is my problem with the I don't know how you feel about legacy numbering. This is my problem with the legacy numbering is just that they fuck it up so often that like it's gotta suck if you're actually trying to like collect out the large legacy.
Here's the thing. We've had a few heated, passionate conversations about how we feel in general about like ongoings and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't love legacy numbering. I think that the way that DC was doing it, where they'd be like, this is issue 150, but also legacy issue 900, that's fun. I think it's like, okay, that's like a fun little like landmark issue, legacy numbering. But like, I love when they go back to number one for like a different vibe. Like, I think the most recent example of this absolutely is calling this volume one of Nightwing. Like,
But that's
leave
the
it
collected.
it's
They
the
didn't go back to
collective.
one when they
I
started
think
that. Like,
that it would have
almost
been
always start with
totally
the collected.
fine for them to go issue. Oh, what was it like? He was whatever it was, instead of being like issue 79, being like issue 1. It's a new era for Nightwing. I think that is a I like when they do that, because
I
I'm
would
someone
argue
who
though that
loves to
Nightwing
like.
is absolute proof that you don't have to do that to increase.
You don't have to, but I like when
because
you do.
like Nightwing sales started going off the charts, the collectors did great, all that stuff did great, and they didn't have to renumber to bring in new readers. So I think
yes,
that's
but I think
like,
it's nice
I
when
think
they
that's
do so.
And like, I think my thing is, I wish that legacy numbering was like in reverse. Like, I wish that we kept the larger numbers as the official numbers, and like when it's a new run, you do like a run or volume issue 1 or something like that.
I'm actually
like,
going to talk back on myself here.
Yeah.
Because I'm realizing I think Marvel used to do that, actually. Like, they would, on like the top left or the top right corner of their issues, put like a big red square with a big number 1.
I think
when
it was like
the
Marvel
start of a
issues
new
that
arc.
did like 1 over something, like for an arc, like where it's like 1 of 6 of this
No, they
arc
would
or
do
something
like just issue
I feel like I
7
remember Marvel
of the
doing
Black
that.
Widow series.
I don't know why. I don't know why I feel like maybe it wasn't Marvel. I feel like either Marvel or DC did that at one point, where they did like a 1 over for story arcs. I don't remember who.
Interesting.
I
yeah, so I'm gonna walk back on what I said and say I wouldn't want it to be that frequent. Like, I don't want it to be every arc. I want it to be like at the start of a new era, you know?
I get that. I'm just saying I would prefer they do the reverse with the legacy number, because I'd rather the big number be like the main number, and then you can be
That's
like,
so fair.
Also, I feel like they fucked that up less, because you only have to count to like 6 before you restart,
Yeah.
instead of like having to count in the 900s. Like, they can't do that. But anyway,
it's also nice. I love it when, and I know that it really only happens when it's crossover stories and stuff, but I love it when on the cover it's like Batman Prodigal Part 8. I'm like, yes, perfect. Now I know that I have to find Batman Prodigal parts 1 through 7.
That's what like DC definitely used to do that a lot, where they would put like part whatever of the story arc, and that I think was great. It's like issue 100, but it's part 2 of the story arc, and then it's like, great, now I know that this story arc. Well, you see part 1 of this story,
and
arc,
like they do that.
It's part 1. We can jump on. Despite the
they
fact
do
that
that a lot more often on the interiors now.
They do. Just stick that shit on the cover. I feel like Marvel and DC have become so much more scared of having words on the cover that aren't like the title. Like, you go to your old school comics and it's like, a brand new bold tale. What will Batman do today? Like, it's just a ton. I don't think we need that much.
Oftentimes a little much, especially the one that gets me is all new collectors issue. It's like
90s.
Shut the fuck up, Marvel.
That was the full 90s.
It was the full
vibe,
90s, yeah.
Yeah, but no, I would appreciate like just put the title of the story arc on it. Like, that's what I think is really missing. I think the story arcs used to be on the cover a ton. Yeah, and you used to be like, okay, great, it's this story. So if somebody tells you to read like this story, you're not like, somebody doesn't have to tell you an issue number or like something like that. You just find the issue that has the story on it. So I think
my gut instinct in saying that is that I think that one, they would do that for like stories that crossed books. Like Batman Prodigal was in Detective
They still
Comics.
do it for stories that cross books.
And I think they would also do it for non marquee series. Like the Legend of the Dark Knight series would have like huge title cards on the bottom of it. So you're like, oh, Batman Werewolf, part 4 of 4. Or like, Batman Gothic, part 1 of 2, or whatever it was, which I love so much. As someone
I think the issues that come to my mind for whatever reason from that are the Nightfall issues. Like, they always have, because there were so many of them. It was like an 18-part series across like all the Batman books or whatever. So I just have the clear image of like Nightfall part 1, Nightfall part 11, Nightfall part. Like,
and I loved the way they did it with Nightfall, where they would have the little Nightfall logo in the top right.
Yeah,
So
no, the
fun.
Nightfall is cool. I actually really want to like do a Nightfall collection at some point and just
We
get
could
all those.
do we could do a Nightfall collection. I
But anyway,
I actually just recently at the bookstore put a copy of Nightfall Part 18 on my shelf. That's, I believe, Part 18. It's the one where the bat is broken. I'm like, oh, what a fun piece of iconic comic book
yeah.
history.
What a yeah.
What a good story.
Nightfall is just cool issues. I love that. Like they just
Nightfall is
feel
very cool
cool. They
issues.
feel cool.
But I don't remember how this started. DC fucked up the legacy numbering. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. I think we, you know, I'm very happy with how much we were able to talk
Look,
around
you
that.
know that I'm a chatty bitch. It takes nothing for me to go off topic.
So let's hit one more thing. I'm gonna
Sure.
throw one more thing out there because I'm interested to hear how you feel about this. So you know how DC is doing like the compact
Yes.
issues, you know, and they're all $10, and they're like, you know, smaller, whatever. And like obviously, not all the series they're doing this with are the same length, despite them all being the same price. But they're mostly 300 to 400 pages in that like ballpark.
Yeah.
Well, one of the books that DC has now put out is Brian Azzarello and Joker series. I think you're probably familiar with it. Yeah.
Oh, my immediate thought is that's a different aspect ratio than the rest of them.
It's 136 pages long. As in, if I'm looking at the image right now of it like on the shelf with the rest, and it's like chunk, shit, chunk, and it's still $9.99. So my question to you, Katie, is how do you feel about DC slapping some shorter things in there with the same price point?
I think that the first thing is that I'm immediately a little tepid, but if they don't fear putting longer things in there as well, then I think it's totally fine. And I think that if they're going to dedicate themselves to this $9.99 price tag, then I am totally fine with that if they have like incredible variation in size.
I think we were talking about when we were talking about things we wanted to see for this. We were talking about New Frontier and how that was just seemingly going to be way too long, you know, to do. So I'd be interested. Right now, I think Watchmen's the longest one right now, if I'm not mistaken, which is 416 pages, with the rest being mostly like under 350. Wonder Woman Earth 1's the next biggest at 376. So
do you know what the next smallest one is from Joker?
Yeah, it's Batman Court of Owls at 304. Oh no, sorry. All-Star Superman at 296. Is
okay, so we're looking at a difference of like what 100 pages going up, and then a difference of like 50 pages going down.
We're looking at a difference of over 150 pages going down.
Oh no, my math. We don't talk about my math.
We're talking about 136 to 296. So
right, but in the other direction was what I was looking at going down. It's like Watchmen to Wonder Woman.
Oh, like, but that's like that. You mean from the next shortest? Because that's like you mean compare his Joker
from
is
the biggest to the second biggest.
From the second biggest to the second biggest, is 416 to 376. So it's 40 exactly from the biggest to the second biggest.
Okay, so that is not a substantial change as opposed to 150. So again, if they're willing to make bigger, chunkier ones, I would be totally okay with this.
My guess would be that just wouldn't be financially viable, which is why I'm like, why?
Because they would probably do like little part 1, part 2
why
ones.
can't you just make the Joker one like $6? Like, you know.
We'll see how, because what gets me, what strikes me more than the price tag, because like, you know, a difference of $3 or $4, you know, that's the price of a single issue, whatever. What gets me specifically about the Joker is that it was like one of the prestige format Black Label books, wasn't it? Are they going to like just warp it?
I don't know.
Because the prestige format is not at all
there might be like I don't know. But let me.
That's what's
continue,
striking me about this news more than anything.
Well, here's I think what's got some people is they've also announced a few of the coming books, and these page counts are much closer to Joker's than they are to any of the others. We have Kingdom Come by Mark Waid and Alex Ross, which is 208. Static Season 1, which is 184. And then Deceased by Tom Taylor and Trevor Hairsine at 216. So it seems like those 300 to 400 pagers might not be continuing.
That isn't necessarily surprising, especially if they're trying to kind of like get people in the door with them, and then banking on the kind of like collectible, or I guess not collectible, but collector mindset of I want all my books to look the same.
Yeah, I thought the idea though was that these aren't for collectors. You know, like these books were supposed to be to get the general public on them. They're being sold mainly in like bookstores as opposed to comic book stores and stuff. Like, so I don't know that really tracks. That they're looking. I don't know that collectors are going to be like, I need to get all the like. There's the crazy collectors that'll buy everything DC, but I don't think DC does anything for those people because they're going to buy whatever they do. You
right,
know,
but I'm saying that if someone
there's a market for people who are going to be like, I want all the compact compared to like. If they're trying to do like completionist stuff, I would guessing those would be like they're like very nice.
Yeah, I don't mean like comic collectors. I mean the general like kind of collector mindset of like when I get the next book in a series, I want it to be the same format as the previous books I had. So that's like fair. I am very upset when the first 3 books I have are paperback and then the next 2 are hardcover because I caught up to the series. So I'm wondering if they're banking a little bit on people will get into comics reading this way, and then they will want them to look the same.
I don't know. It's interesting for sure.
It is. No, I have one more follow-up question. Yeah. DC's, I like never buy actual volumes, though I guess I do have proof of that right here. Okay, so $25 for like I think
the normal trades, like their 6-issue trades, are typically 15, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe 20 to 25 now. Because I think they used to be 15, but that was probably a while ago. I don't really buy a bunch of trades for DC.
Me either.
I buy mainly like Image trades, and now I'm thinking like I know Image does the thing where the first volume is usually $10, and then the rest of the like volumes go back to the 15.
Like looking for DC trades around me.
But those I don't think I have any DC trades in
okay, one sec. I'm abandoning the frame. I think this might be a Script Heroes first.
I don't know if Katie can even still hear me.
Entertain the masses, Jason.
Maybe I'm just talking to you people now. And yeah, I don't know. I think they're like this. Actually, I can probably Google this. What's a new DC book? We'll look up Green Arrow. Green Arrow. Joshua Williams.
Are you entertaining the masses?
I'm Googling it. No, that's issue 1. I want volume 1.
Okay, so Batman Court of Owls was $17. So that was New 52 era.
Yeah, that's
and
old.
Then
I was trying to find like the
Rebirth
first volume
is also Arrow. $17. Though I got it for $1.
That's also old though. I'm trying to find something from like the new like from Dawn of DC. I can't find the collected edition.
But the fact that between the two of them, like a 5 or so year difference, they're still 17.
You gotta think now it's 8 years since Rebirth, so
Oh my God! Stop saying that.
I don't know.
If you're feeling nostalgic,
we've rambled.
If you're feeling nostalgic for the start of the DC Rebirth era, don't forget to check out our bonus episodes where we read and ranked every single DC Rebirth number 1.
Yeah, about 8 years after they all came out. So yeah, go check that out. It's a great video. It was a lot of fun. Anyway,
and there were only like 2 that completely sucked, which was great.
Were there 2? I can only remember 1. We're not going to try to name what sucked right now in this segment.
I know the one that definitely. Oh, you know what? One. I put something else in the suck category, and you bumped it up a little bit.
Okay. Anyway, I think that's the end of the news. Let's talk about the books for the week.
All right, we have
5.
5 comic books this week. I knew it was either 5 or 4. I was hoping that I'd be quick enough that before I finished the little, it would be apparent. It was not.
It was not.
It was not. We have 5 books to talk about this week. We are talking about Rook Exodus, number 5, The Boy Wonder, number 5. Arkham Horror at the Terror at the End of Time, number 2. Minor Arcana, number 1. And Prairie Gods, number 1.
I tried my best.
He tried his best.
I tried my best.
Here you go. Prairie Gods. There it is. But that's, of course, not all we picked up this week. Jay Bird, what did you get from the comic book store?
I only got a few things this week. I got the new number 1 of the new Lady Mechanica miniseries.
Oh, we talked about doing that for the pod.
Doing this because it's a like series that I see everywhere, especially at conventions, and I was like, you know what? Let me see what that's all about right there.
Yeah, she got all those like sick Art Nouveau covers. They're super rad.
Yeah. Then I've got issue 3 of 4 of the new Grendel series.
Ooh, he is a Grendel boy.
I am a Grendel boy. One of these days we're gonna read Grendel on the podcast.
I'm glad because I have never encountered Grendel.
Good comic book.
Other than like in mythology.
Yeah. And then we have the TMNT Best of Dark Leo collected thing. They do these sometimes with like the best stories of certain characters. And I love Dark Leo. It's my favorite story arc from IDW's TMNT. So yeah, cool. Fun stuff. That's all I picked up. What else did you get this week, Katie?
Well, I got me some Batman 152, some Batman and Scooby-Doo
Legacy number
mysteries.
what? Do you know what legacy number it is?
Oh, no. Legacy number 915?
I don't remember what number. We were looking at 1-8. I don't remember what we were looking at. So
I also don't remember, and I don't remember who was right.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if you would maybe.
Oh man, I forgot to pick up Exceptional X-Men, but I'll grab that next week because I am excited for that one. That's the one with Kitty Pryde in Chicago.
I don't know why I thought that. I thought you were like saying Uncanny X-Men issue 2, and I was like, really? Okay.
No. Here's the thing: I love me some Gambit, but I'll probably pass on the rest of that series until I can be less confused about the X-Men, and we'll see if this is any less confusing.
And yet you're still diving into a new X-Men book, so you know.
Look, it's set in Chicago. It's got Kitty Pryde. It's fun.
Bold move.
It's fun. Emma Frost is going to be there. I'm just saying
it's bold. I'm not saying
I know
bold.
her from Fortnite.
X-Men is a hard property to dive into.
It sure is. But speaking of diving into things,
that's all the.
I think that's it. I picked up like 3 weeks worth of polls. So I have no idea what was from this week.
For the longest time, like up until this episode, basically every episode we did, I either didn't have my books or I had 2 weeks worth of books because I kept missing a week. This is my first time that I was actually able to like just get.
Well, I'm glad that you're prepared.
Yeah,
I was on vacation the past 2 weeks. Little behind the scenes for you.
Peeling back the curtain,
which I think they already know because last week we recorded when I was jet lagged.
Yeah.
So,
question, order,
yes, question. I
order
think
in the court.
Gavel smack. I think we do a little bit of a climb upward, a little upward ascent.
Are you saying in terms of issue numbers?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think we start with Prairie Gods.
Okay.
Then we go to Minor Arcana.
Okay.
Then we go to Arkham Horror.
Okay.
Then we go to Rook Exodus.
Okay.
And then we go to The Boy Wonder.
Okay.
I hardly boy know her.
Okay.
All right, let's go to whatever I said was first. Prairie Gods.
Let's do it. Prairie Gods number 1. Created by the artists of Nottingham, Prairie Gods is the Twilight Zone meets Sin City. Each self-contained issue centers on a supernatural events and characters in and around the small prairie town of Boatacres. The series will resonate with fans of Hellboy, while the shifting genres and themes will appeal to the fans of westerns, crimes, and race car movies. A dose of action throughout. The first exhilarating story features Freddie Davis, a champion race car driver who has returned home to Broadacres. He buys the abandoned speedway, intending to race its only undefeated driver, the Devil himself. The writer-artist on this is Shane Connery-Volk of Nottingham, and the letter is Becca Carey. You had definitely told me that this was like kind of an anthology thing before we read it, but I'm going to say I forgot until reading this summary right now.
I did not, which is why I said it was first, because then it's in even more ascending order. Standalone
That's fair. That's fair. Katie, how'd you
Yeah.
feel with the first issue of Prairie Gods?
I'm not gonna lie, this goes fucking hard for me. Like, I love a self-contained story so much. And distilling that down to a single issue, I think is a ton of fun. It's such a good vibe to have such little space, because that means it's like all vibes, baby. Like, you don't have time for long-winded exposition. You don't have time for like kind of I don't know, the world building or deep character stuff. Everything is shorthand and everything is about the energy of the book. And we've said it before, and I'll say it again. Writer artists are so astounding when it comes to bringing the exact, like, I keep saying vibe and energy, but they're able to
Please
capture
on a
such a
pure
perfect
vibe review this week.
Okay. This book is a full vibe review, and I like it so much. And I think that it really is very important that it is a writer artist doing this, because he's able to just command the page with absolute authority. The energy that he brings to, and by that I mean the actual energy, not the vibes, that he brings
The
to
vibular energy.
the vehicular energy, because it's a vehicle, that he brings to this car race is so cool. The sequence of him going through the track and hitting like the devil's turn or whatever, and then this like meteor coming through and the devil crashing onto the road and them racing, that was so fucking sick. I think that this story works at its best in this single issue form, and I think that the single issue form works so well with this type of story. I really liked this. I'm so hype on this series.
I think you're very right in the vibe sense. I said in my own notes, I wrote it has like a charm about it. Like
Mm-hmm.
it has a very like distinctive tone
Yes.
when you, and like it feels very, and that's something that I think writer artists are very typically very good at communicating, because
Mm-hmm.
everything kind of works to that together. I actually do like it a little bit more, like now remembering that it's a one shot and knowing
Yeah.
that, because my brain was a little bit in like, huh,
He
where
kind of
does
got
this
what he
story
wanted
kind
already.
of go? Yeah, I was like, I don't know how this continues. I do really like the issue ender, especially
Mm-hmm.
now that I know that it's like a
Yeah.
full ender. Um, I'm gonna hit my one gripe that keeps me from like loving this,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something we've talked about a lot on the podcast. Car action's hard to do in comics, and I think this is one of the books where I don't love it, especially before it becomes the full race, when it's just his single car
Mm-hmm.
driving around. Like, there's a lot of, all of a sudden he's in the air, and maybe the captions explain to you why he's in the air, but there's no clear visual as to how his car would have gotten into the air. And there's a lot of things like that where it's just like turn, drive, and there's not a feeling of motion to it a lot of times to me, like from panel to panel. And the race, I think you're right, that moment where it appears is phenomenal and awesome and exciting, and the ending's good, but a lot of the race is kind of just one car being in front of the other car and then being like, can he catch up?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's an exceptionally hard thing to do a race in comic books, so this isn't like shade, but it didn't super work for me because of how hard races are to do in comic books, so I didn't really feel like, get him! Like I was following a chase. It very
Yeah.
much felt like I was kind of having the chase explained to me. To some
That's
extent.
super fair.
I
was
really
I
do
was
like
there
the
with
characters
it.
as well, which is what I'm gonna say. I like the character. I like the like cop dude as well, even though he's not like there for very long.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and
again,
yeah, I
with
thought
those
the
little
writing
one
was
shots,
pretty
it's all
strong
about
in
that
general.
shorthand.
Like the story worked really well, especially as a one shot. Like that
Mm-hmm.
really helps me a lot, as we're like knowing them to one shot now. I think it was a tight story, like you said. A one shot kind of makes it be a tight story. But yeah, for me, the car like chase action wasn't super there. So yeah, I thought it was a solid issue, and
Hell
enjoyable.
yeah.
But yeah,
Me
that's
too.
my feeling.
Stick around to the end of the section to figure out if it made either one of our pull list recs. But for now, we're going to move on to Minor Arcana. Minor Arcana number 1. Teresa, the daughter of a small-town psychic fraud, returns home to care for her ailing mother, however begrudgingly. But when Teresa discovers that there may be more to the magic than she originally believed, she'll find herself caught up in a town that desperately needs her help. The writer-artist here is Jeff Lemire of Sweet Tooth, Black Hammer, and a pod favorite, I think, Maze Book. It remained in our top 10, I think, by the time we dismissed the back issue
By the
review.
time the top 10 died.
Yeah. And the letter is Steve Wands. So we've read Maze Book. Jane, have you ever read Sweet Tooth?
I have not. I know
Neither
it's
have
very
I.
popular.
Yeah. I also have not. But we liked Maze Book. Jeff Lemire has like a very distinct style, especially artistically.
Very much so.
How did you like Minor Arcana number 1?
It's a very interesting issue. Like it's got a kind of unique flair. It's Maze Book-esque unique flair to it. What I'll say is, one, Jeff Lemire knows how to capture your attention. The first page is phenomenal. Like it's just such a good gripper. It's like, oh my god. Jeff Lemire has like a very like almost psychedelic is almost the wrong word, but like a very I'm not going to think of the word, so we're going to move it. Like a not even realism, like a very non like plot driven, like just a very like we've said vibes a lot. He's got a very vibe style where he just kind of goes into like strange. I don't want to say ramblings because that sounds bad, but like ramblings about like the universe and like people's place in the world, and it tends to land very well, and I think it does in this issue. I really like the characters. We really only get 2 characters to get like a ton going on. I guess the woman at the end gets a decent amount of stuff too, but I'm not going to remember anybody's name because it's been
Teresa is the daughter.
You are correct. So Teresa and her mother, I think, have a very like. We've talked about issues before where it's like, oh, neither of these people are really likable, and like that's the kind of the case here. But they have such a like interesting and captivating dynamic.
Yes,
and their interactions are very captivating. And it just really pulls you in. So yeah, this was an issue that definitely intrigued me. I'd say my one maybe gripe, if that's maybe even a strong word to say it, is something that I think I would have felt with Maze Book if we read it issue by issue, which just that not a ton really progresses in this issue. It feels like a book that's probably going to feel much better to read in a collected edition.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm kind of jumping the gun on saying that, but that's just my like initial guess. But that's really my main gripe. I thought this was a very intriguing first issue.
No, my main gripe is literally the same one, and I think it ties in a little bit to something that we briefly joked about. I don't even remember if it was in an episode or not, where you're like, yeah, Robert Kirkman can take his time because he doesn't have to worry about selling his book.
I think we said that just as we cut last week's episode.
Yeah. Like, he knows that he has the time to tell the story the way he wants to tell it. And I think Jeff Lemire is in a very similar position, where if Jeff Lemire comes to you with a book, you're probably going to publish his book.
Yeah.
Like, he's such a, even if not for, like, a hugely, like, prolific section of books, such an identifiable and, like, he's such a strong member of, like, the comic identity, I think, when you look at indie comics.
Absolutely.
And so I think that he is someone who can get away with having an incredibly slow start. Like, the even the summary, I'm like, I'm not seeing a lot of what the summary is saying in here. Like, what do you mean she's gonna save the town desperately needs her help? What are we looking at here? What's going on?
Yeah.
And we get, like,
I mean, I'd say maybe the vibe of just to play devil's advocate of town that desperately needs her help is that they're all, like, very dependent on the psychic, like, for the, like, and, like, we're supposed to see that through, like, the woman here of, like, the woman, desperately needs her help, so, like...
For sure.
Maybe that's the vibe. Yeah, there's my slight devil's advocate.
No, that's very fair. But it doesn't come until like very end of the issue. We're so much more
Yes.
focused on Teresa, and I don't know if you noticed, Jaybird, in the back, it's a long form series. It's going to be collected into 4 volumes. So when I say Jeff Lemire is
I did
starting
not
slow,
know that.
yeah,
I thought this was going to be like a 6-issuer. Oh, I feel even
Nope.
better about this now.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Jeff Lemire has long plans for this.
I like that.
And
I'm very, very happy to hear that.
I am so hype on it. I wish that I knew a little bit more about like
this.
Yeah, up top there.
Yeah, we're like one title. I'm guessing that's the 4 volumes.
It shows you in the back. It's the Book of Wands, the Book of Swords,
I like
the
that.
Book
of
of
I'm even more behind this
Cups,
than I
and the Book
already
of Pentacles.
was.
Yeah, this is, I think, the start of something phenomenal, and I'm really, really excited to see where it goes.
I agree with you.
Teresa and her mom have such like an immediately understood relationship.
It's
like,
so effortlessly like relatable and realistic and just identifiable, and
exactly,
it's so good.
And I love the groundwork we set with the townsfolk. Like you said, not a lot of people got attention, but we saw Teresa interact with someone when she first gets into town. It's like, okay.
Oh, her like the one who went to school with her too. Yeah.
And we also see the glimpses of Teresa's like ex-girlfriend, or like clearly like codependent small town lesbians, who is now presumably married in a house with someone. And so you really get that groundwork there for the town. And the character that I'm most excited for is Teresa's grandpa. We have like a kind of flashbacky memory thing with him. And I am hyped for this, man. I think that is going to be a relationship that's going to rip my fucking guts out and just play in the blood. And be like, yeah, this is such a nice relationship, isn't it? Too bad his jacket's here, but he's not. Wonder what happened to him. I am
like the way you did that.
I am super, super excited for this entire long form series from Jeff Lemire.
Totally agree with you. I'm very excited for it.
But are we ready to move on to something a little bit supernatural as well with Arkham Horror?
Let's do it.
Terror at the End of Time.
Yes. Arkham Horror, The Terror at the End of Time. Number 2. A horde of monsters has risen from the dust, and Joe and Jenny find themselves outnumbered. The cultists provided them with just one clue: Greymon. But where or who is Greymon? Will Joe and Jenny find answers or more questions? And what further dangers lie within the shifting sands of the artifacts? The writer on the series is Cullen Bunn, who's worked on Sinestro, X-Men, and Ghost Lore. The artist is Andrea Moody, who's worked on 2000 AD, Charred Remains, and G.I. Joe. The colorist is Valerio Aloro, and the letter is Hassan Itzman Alao. Katie.
Yeah.
You have some attachment to Arkham Horror.
I do.
You were here for issue 1.
I was here for issue 1.
How you feeling with issue 2? We got more of the time in the Terror at the End of Time in this issue.
We sure did. And that is kind of the big thing that I really like about this series. I really love the concept of it, like the groundwork we're getting for what's going on and like the mystery of it all. I think is really fun, really like kind of true to the vibes of the Cthulhu mythos. Like the idea of the artifact they have being an hourglass is super, super rad.
Yeah.
And we learned some more about the like supernatural shit that's going on, and I really, really like that. The rest of it is not really vibing with me anymore. Like I think that I was
he dropped here. Interesting.
I very much dropped. I think that I was very here for the first issue as kind of like a churning up excitement thing, because I was very excited about it and I really did like it. But I feel like a lot of the dialogue didn't hit me well in this one. Like it
Interestingly, I was going to say I thought the dialogue was improved from issue 1 in this one. Wacky. I thought the dialogue was better in this. If you remember in issue 1, I said did not feel like Cullen Bunn dialogue. I was like,
that's what I was going to say about this issue, is that it doesn't feel like Cullen Bunn dialogue.
This was better. I thought there was more characterization in the dialogue instead of like just moving plot along stuff. Like remember issue 1, we had the line about like I would never let anybody join me. I won't let you know. But I can tell that you won't,
Yeah.
let me not, so you can join me, whatever. There's nothing in this that felt so clunky like that.
I don't know.
So
I feel like a lot of the 1920s kind of slangy bits really felt super clunky. Like, I think that it did much more to pull me out of the reading experience than to immerse me into it, which is something we touched on with like using specific dialogue, things like that, last week or the week before in our
Yeah.
creator corner, where like, do you use a kind of strong accent for your characters? Do you use like kind of phonetic speech? And this is an example I found where I'm like, okay, I feel like this is making me feel like I'm watching it from a distance as opposed to being up close and personal with them. And I really, really love Andrea Moody's art, especially in like the way that he's drawing the supernatural things and the action bits. But I feel like he is not as strong with a lot of the, you know what? It's it's kind of a blend between feeling like perhaps the script, the art, and the lettering don't feel super congruous. Like, a character will say something dramatic, not look particularly dramatic, but then the lettering makes it seem even more dramatic. And I think that there's not a great handle on the tone of this book for the team working together.
That I'll agree with. I think that the expressions did not match the dialogue a lot of the time. That is
Yeah,
definitely
and I think that that's exacerbated by what I normally love about Hassan Usmanalau's dialogue, or his lettering, which is how expressive his lettering is. But I think that it just served to make even more expressive these expressive lines that then don't really match up with the art.
That's fair. Yeah. Well, I think I said with the first issue, I didn't really think this series was going to be super for me, but then they kind of started playing around with some of this cool time stuff. That stuff I definitely liked a lot more in this issue. I like this issue a lot more than issue 1. It's still not, I think, super my vibe of a series, but I like a lot of what they're doing now, with like the kind of time bending. I thought it was interesting. Like you said, the mystery that they kind of start setting up, that is very intriguing. And I'm definitely intrigued by it. But yeah, I kind of agree with you that it doesn't feel like everything's quite coming together correctly. But yeah, that's my thought overall.
Yeah. Right. Well, we have 2 more books to talk about, starting with Rook Exodus number 5.
Let's do it.
Rook Exodus number 5. I'm gonna try to match it up with my head. There we go. Ursa, ruler of Exodus. Rook, food for the vultures. Left for dead after last issue's slobber knocker, Rook faces his greatest fears as the animal world completely turns against him. And without them, he's frankly better off dead. Also, what does Ursa plan to do with his prize? The writer here is Jeff Johns of Green Lantern, Flash, and Justice League. The artist is Jason Fabok of Batman, Justice League, and Suicide Squad. The colorist is Brad Anderson, and the letterer is Rob Lay. Jay.
Yes.
We freaking love Rook Exodus.
Yep.
How you feeling about issue 5?
The first thing I want to say
Uh-huh.
is, why are Image Comics like solicitation blurbs so funny?
I
don't know why
funny.
They always come across.
I want to know.
Funny.
I need to know who the fuck at Image Comics just forced me to read the phrase "slobber knocker" out loud.
Like here, it definitely isn't. But I'm gonna choose to believe that it's Todd McFarlane doing all of them. It sounds like him. It's like, oh yeah, it's a slobber knocker. It's a slobber knocker. I promise you, it's a slobber knocker. You're gonna
love that both of us just immediately jumped into a bad Todd McFarlane.
Oh my gosh, guys, it's a slobber knocker.
It's a slobber knocker.
I'm sorry, Todd McFarlane. You're one of the all-time greats. I love your work.
Yes. But it does sound like something he would say.
It does. It's his hype. It's his hype.
It's got such nerdy jock energy, which I feel like is the energy that Todd McFarlane brings to the table.
It is. Anyway, moving on from us throwing shade for no good reason at one of the greatest to ever do it.
God bless.
Let's talk about another one of the greatest to ever do it. I said it when issue 1 came out. I'm going to say it again here. Jeff Johns is motherfucking back, baby. Like,
Yes.
holy shit. This is a goddamn filler issue. We've been talking about bubble issues and like filler issues in all of these series we've been reading. This is one. And it might just be one of the best damn filler issues you'll ever read in your life. Like, this turned into
the
a
amount of character momentum.
God tier one shot. Like, I don't care if you've never read an issue of Rook Exodus, pick up this goddamn issue and it's gonna be one of the best things you've ever read in your life. Also, I just gave Jeff Johns so much credit, and I'm gonna explain why I love what Jeff Johns did in this issue so much, but it needs to be said that Jason Fabok is one of the best artists.
I literally was about to say,
because
fucking
holy
Rook.
shit! Oh my god, some of these looks like that was at the end of the issue. I shouldn't show you that. But like the way that the fire looks all throughout this, I held that up before.
The way that the birds fly,
the fucking scarecrow aesthetic in this, and just the whole theme of like the scarecrow and the way that worked into this was amazing. And basically, most of this issue is Rook interacting with either the actual Pumbaa or his mental like idea of Pumbaa or whatever, and it's amazing. We talked, I think, in really issue 2 when we read issue 2 about like, was Swine's idea of like the animals as actual friends versus being controlled gonna be explored more because it was such a right concept for exploration.
Yeah.
Well, they have noticed that. Jeff Johns has noticed that, and he is delving into it to the depths. He does it here with Pumbaa and the crows.
Yep.
And he's playing so much with the idea of how the oh man, what are they called?
Wardens.
Wardens, thank you. How the wardens interact with their animals. How they decide. He delves into Rook's psyche so deeply in this issue, and it's beautiful and it's amazing, and you finally feel like you really understand Rook as a character when you're done with this issue.
Yes.
This is, I hope not to like unspoil anything for what might come later. This is one of the best issues, I think, of comics that has come out this year so far. This is so ridiculously good.
That is incredibly high praise, and I think very well warranted. I don't know that I can make as bold a claim. I'll reserve that for if we talk about our favorite issues of the year at the end of the year. But
I'm sure we will.
This
is one that I'm gonna have to just
really
watch all our episodes when we do that, so that I don't backload it with stuff that's like recent.
Oh, don't worry. You've said this is one of my favorite issues in comic books like 7 different times this year.
It can be. They can all. I said one of. You know, I could be talking about my like 200 favorites. You don't know. You don't know my story.
You're right. But I do know Rook's story, and it is so rad. When I tell you the goose I bumped when he had his I'm not going to expand on what it is to preserve the magic, but his fight and flight moment is so good. The way that was built to, the way that he is interacting with the crows for the entire issue is so great as he's like trying to get his helmet back online, but the crows are like scared and leaving, and the way that he tries to communicate with them, the way that Swine was able to communicate with like Pumbaa and stuff is so phenomenal. And frankly, the fact that Pumbaa is still there.
I love Pumbaa. What a lad.
Pumbaa literally saved Rook's life. Like, there is don't want to get too spoilers. There is some debate as to whether or not Pumbaa is actually like projecting his thoughts to Rook. It's a wild device to choose, but I said from the start that I was immediately stricken with tragic feelings having lost Swine, and I feel like Pumbaa brings back the Swine energy so well.
Can we talk about how good of a job they have done for, like a new series, killing off character was it issue 2 or the end of issue 1?
I believe it was issue 1, because we had the
we had like the
issue
thing. That's what's like throwing me off. End of issue 1, killing off who was set up to be a major character. They have done such a phenomenal job making that feel important throughout the rest of the series, and as the series continues, like they've not made us go, oh well, yeah, I don't even like remember Swine in the series. Like, oh yeah, they killed him off in issue 1. Like, yeah, that character doesn't matter. Like, no,
I miss him every day,
and he radiates through the series so completely. and it's just
Yes.
so phenomenally done. But you mentioned Rook's mask, and I want to throw one last great credit to Jason Fabok. We've talked in every single issue about how phenomenal these masks are. That's not what I'm about to say. What I'm about to say is this is by far, I think, the longest we've gone seeing Rook without his mask.
Mm-hmm.
And you almost forget with everybody having these gorgeous masks what Jason Fabok can do with a face and with expressions when
It's
he gets
so
to show
phenomenal.
that face. And it's so good. Like, he still does a great job with, like, Jason Fabok does a lot of, like, zooming in on different parts of the faces to, like, give you emotion on a static image. And it's really smart, and it's really good. And he can do it with the mask, too. But the things that he can do when, like, you see the eyes and such are just phenomenal. There's so much life in, like, it might be a weird thing to say, but I think Jason Fabok might draw the best eyes in comic books. Like, there are just
I
such
think that's
life
absolutely
to
true.
his eyes.
I think
Like,
that is 100% true.
It's crazy. Like, I feel like I'm staring into the eyes of a real man when I look into this man's eyes.
Yes.
It's such a, like, oddly random thing to pick up, but it adds so much life
so
to,
true,
to the character.
It's so phenomenal.
I
Jason
love this.
Fabok, a legend. Jeff Johns regaining his legend status.
Just
We've got one more book to talk about before we jump into our pull list recs for the week. So stand by for The Boy Wonder, number 5.
Let's do it! The Boy Wonder, number 5. The Robins have united to battle their way out of the stronghold of the Demon's Head. But Damien cutting his family's ties to Ra's al Ghul isn't just a matter of punching his way through ninjas. Could this fairy tale possibly have a happy ending? Or is the story of Damian Wayne an inescapable tragedy? The writer of this series, the writer and artist of this series, is Junie Ba of Monkey Meat, Delilah, and TMNT. The colorist is Chris O'Halloran, and the letterer is Adita Bittaker. So, Katie, we read a lot of these issues, and we've kind of had very unique feelings about each issue. I'd say this isn't been like a constant vibe. So I'm interested. How did you think it stuck the landing?
I think that these past 2 issues have been quite good as their own series. Like, this issue does try to harken back to weirdly just Jason's issue, which threw me off because I feel like it went a little half and half, where Damien didn't quite like use the lessons he learned to succeed, which I think kind of made the rest of the series feel weaker in retrospect. But it was a good ending, I think, especially the actual ending. I feel like the race part in the middle might have dragged a little bit for me, especially because a lot of it wasn't as, like, we had really good character interactions in the previous issue where Damien was interacting with his grandfather and Talia, and I think that those were incredibly, incredibly strong. But it was a lot more like kind of action-y in this issue. There's like a number of pages with just no dialogue that are just like frankly rad action because Junie Ba has such a fun, energetic art style.
Absolutely.
Like this shot of Talia, Bruce, and Damien, I love that so much. And then it goes into like 4 or 5 pages of just dialogueless action. But this one also, I think, suffered a bit from the framing device that we have going on.
Yeah.
Because if you remember, not really you, I know you remember, but for readers at home, there's this framing device of the fairy tale, and specifically the fairy tale being told to a random criminal by some kid in a warehouse. And I will say, without expanding on it at all, because I think it's a huge, huge spoiler, I thought the reveal about the warehouse scene was really wonderful at first and then too much after that. But I really loved the initial reveal about the kid in the warehouse.
I thought it was going to be something else, and I liked that initially for this universe. And I was like, oh, that's a cool way to kind of show Damien like learning and kind of going into this place. And then it wasn't what I really thought it was, and it became something else, and I was like, oh, don't love that, but it's okay.
Yeah. So I liked the reveal. I didn't love the kind of follow up on the story in the warehouse. But yeah, I think that this was a fine ending for the story. I think that it was more on par with the first and the fourth issue than the second and third. Like I said, I think it's a
I
little
agree.
odd that Jason gets to do a little monologue in the middle where he like specifically resolves his trauma, and then the lessons that Dick and Tim gave Damien don't really come up. So I thought that was a little bit odd. I guess Dick's does a little bit where it's like, oh, you've got to make sure that you're being nice to people.
Yeah, it's an
But
interesting thing because, like we talked about, like those three issues didn't really do, or those two issues rather, because Dix did a decent job of like Jason and Tim didn't do a great job of like actually getting lessons across. So it's hard
yeah,
to harken back when you like didn't really do it in the first place.
which
But I agree with you. I think
feels
this is like
like
a solid individual issue. My main gripe is, despite the like many pages of action, those like it's very much just, it feels like pages of action without it being clear, like, okay, now we're gaining the advantage, now we're gaining the disadvantage.
mhm,
And then because of that, despite the fact that there's all these pages of fighting before they win, the win feels very easy and anticlimactic.
very much so.
So that's my main gripe, is it didn't feel like we talked about it with the Daredevil book, how like there was a really long fight scene, but they did such a good job of making it feel like
Yes.
segmented and progressive, and this is what's happening, and this is who has the advantage, and this is how they're countering. This feels like just 5 pages of they fight, and then I'm gonna write the ending to them.
Yeah.
So, not my favorite there. I do really like the way Junie Bot illustrates action,
Yes.
so it was entertaining to
Super
read,
fun,
but that's
not
my
necessarily.
gripe about it.
No, I hear you.
And then I have
agree.
that slight gripe about the ending as a whole, too. But
I will say
I
though,
really like the
speaking
actual
in
Ra's method of defeat. Like I think like that, and the way that harkened
yeah,
back to
yeah,
the
yeah,
beginning
that
of
was
this
neat.
issue. I think this did. And I think it's the same thing. Like the beginning of this issue does what they did so well with the beginning of Talia, where it's like the League just fits this framing device, the fairy tale part of the framing device,
Yes.
so well that it worked strongest with Ra's and with Talia.
Yes.
And so I really like that in this issue as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As one more note, I will say I think that the end to end works a lot better for something like this that's not a part of like a continuing story. So I can give it a little bit more forgiveness for that than if it was like
Yeah.
the end of an arc or, part of the DC canon. But it is still a little underwhelming.
I also
Do you have any
really like the first like 5 pages, like the build up to Batman coming was done really well.
It was.
That being said, I don't know that I love the decision for Batman to come at all. Like, to me, it was a little bit of like, oh, now he kind of gets more of the spotlight compared to Damian in this climax. So
especially when so much of the issue is also focused on race.
yeah.
So Damian does not get very much attention in this issue
build
about
and him
Damian.
actually showing up. I've shown the page a bunch of times of like
with the POW.
Yeah.
Junie Bot's just fun.
Execution very, very well. I don't know if I love the idea of bringing Batman in.
Super valid.
So yeah, it was a very solid issue in my opinion.
Yeah,
but,
and I think a fine
solid
ending to the series.
Yeah.
But do you have any additional thoughts on the Boy Wonder, or are you ready to jump in?
I'm ready to give our official pull list Rex of the week.
Our
do you want to start
official pull list
very
Rex.
pointedly to you.
I feel like yours is much more obvious than mine.
What do you mean? I have not made this obvious.
Go on, Jaybird. Tell us your very surprising pull list Rex.
I'm going to recommend to everybody that they should read Rook Exodus #5. Grab it. It's fantastic. It's really, really good. Jeff Johns at the top of his game. Jason Fabok at the top of his game. Good stuff. Read it right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
I'm going to my camera.
I am going to give mine to Minor Arcana #1.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Not
what I had predicted based on your level of excitement from reviews.
It was tough because as much as I really loved, I don't think it would be hard to surmise that mine was a tear between Prairie Gods and Minor Arcana.
I really thought it was going to be Prairie Gods based on how you reviewed that book.
Really what it came down to was I really loved Prairie God as its own thing, but knowing how far Minor Arcana is going to be going, it just leaves you so excited. That slow start feels like the start of like an ember that's going to turn into a wildfire, as opposed to something that just is already a bonfire. I'm so stoked for Minor Arcana.
Minor Arcana was probably my second choice here too. If Rook Exodus hadn't run away with it, Minor Arcana was really great too. So
yeah,
pick up Minor Arcana and Rook Exodus.
Good week.
Those are our official pull list Rex of the week. But we have one thing left to do today, and that is get creative in a corner.
Here we are in the creator corner where we sit back, relax, talk about books, talk about writing, talk about our processes and outputs. This week, we're doing a bit of a companion piece to last week. Last week we
You love
talked about.
companion pieces and part twos and.
It's not really a part two, it's a companion
Okay.
piece.
Okay.
Last week we talked about romance, which is one way to, fill a page that's not kind of like main plot. And this week we're talking about another way to fill pages that isn't kind of main plot-y, but is also in the same way that romance is also. We're going to talk about strategies for writing action and combat. Because, yeah, he's excited because every single time I read one of Jay's scripts, my biggest feedback is always, "You're so good at writing combat, what the fuck?" Do you actually want to start off by giving us a little bit of your background with combat and fighting? Because I feel like it's legitimately incredibly relevant.
Yeah, I want to start by saying Katie also will often send me a message that is barely understandable of like, what is this thing I'm thinking of called where the person, does this thing really well. Like the last one you sent me, I want you to know that I thought when I said I don't know what the name of it was, I was thinking of a completely different thing than when you actually sent me like what it was once you found it. Anyway, just
which is why I think it's important to know that you have a wonderful background in fighting, because it's so relevant to being able to communicate these things.
I mean, there's your quick fun story of when I decided to start writing comics was when I blew up my knee doing martial arts and then thought, oh no, I can't have a future martial art. It did not end up being as bad. They thought I tore my ACL originally. Did not tear my ACL. It was a deep bone contusion, which sounds weird, but is really not that big of a deal. And so I started writing comics. But before that, I did, and I continued doing martial arts after that, but I did martial arts for 12 years about, and that was most of my life for a great deal of years. So yeah, got a large background in that kind of stuff, which according to Katie is very helpful for writing combat. I don't know if it is. It helps you know the name of things, but the problem I run into is that doesn't help if your artist doesn't know the names of things. So
it's very Googleable.
It's very Googleable. I use a lot of reference images for stuff like that.
Jay.
And typically using professional wrestling terms. Here's your quick tip. A lot of comic book artists and writers are also into pro wrestling, so using pro wrestling terms can actually be incredibly helpful.
Well, I think that it's also helpful to mention that Jay is super into pro wrestling.
I am.
Your
but
first
I'm not the only one.
Writing jobs were literally for
a pro wrestler. Yes,
pro wrestler.
Is true. Yeah. That is true.
Shout out Brimstone.
Shout out Brim. Yeah. What a legend.
Go on, Jay. Ask me about my history with fighting.
Katie, tell me your history with fighting.
Well, in my youth, I took less than 10 classes of Taekwondo when I was in first grade. So I know, moves
Katie is very experienced.
down block and middle block and high block and horse riding stance. So I don't quite have the vocabulary.
3 of those were correct.
What was not correct?
Middle block is not a thing.
Well, when they would have us do our little training, they'd have us do a down block, a middle block, and a high block.
I've heard it called a high block. It's usually called upper block. But I've never heard middle block. You have out block, inner out block. There's multiple things you can do in the middle. But
I was in first grade.
No, I know. That's what I was like.
They were trying to give me more words.
3 out of 4 of those are correct.
There we go.
Horse riding stance or just horse stance is also correct.
And then a single self-defense class that my father had me and my sister take before my sister went to college.
Nice.
So I am clearly very ready to, from experience, visualize and put onto paper various fighting scenarios. But Jay, you are in fact really, really good at writing out combat scenes.
And I appreciate that.
I think that I like to think it's because of your years of experience with martial arts, so that I have the excuse of, I just read about fighting. But that is not the case. It's also, a natural aptitude and a good sense of the rhythm of combat. So where do you start when you're sitting down to write a fight scene? Do you, and
Yeah,
this is more from my curiosity than anything, so I'm gonna ask a very specific question. Do you
yeah,
like
go for it.
plan out how many pages you want your fight to be? Do you plan out like
Yeah,
kind of
typically,
landmark moments? What does it
typically
actually
like
look like when you're writing
so.
fights?
uh, Typically by the time I get to writing a fight, I'll have like outlined my issue, which means I'll
Mhm.
have a certain amount of pages for the fight. My fights have in at times gone long, and I've had to then like figure out how to cut other things. Sometimes I also just have a fight scene very like this is I'm pitching a series right now where like very specifically the first thing I did for this book before basically anything else was write out the last 6 pages, of which a lot of it is a fight scene. So
Hell yeah.
sometimes I will just get a fight scene in my head and I'm like, okay, this happens. But typically, yeah, I'll have a length and then I'll have like big moments in my head of the fight scene. Like from the very like moment I kind of decide on doing a fight scene, I'll typically know like this is how it's ending. Either in like this person escapes or this person gets,
Mhm.
somebody else has to sacrifice themselves so that whatever happens. And then like typically I'll know a couple moments in there that I'm visualizing as being like these cool, epic, intense moments. Because I think that fight scenes allow for these, and I think comic books in general revolve around a lot around, especially I'll say superhero comics, but like any sort of like actiony or like fantasy comics revolve around a lot around like epic moments, and
Yeah.
that's what people will like really latch onto. So especially in a fight scene, I think you should figure out those moments, and then it's very important that you can logically bridge from one moment to the next. But you need to know those moments because it's actually like we'll go back to that Daredevil issue that we talked about last week, and I mentioned earlier. Like you want your fight to feel very much like it has a progress that isn't just they fight and then one person wins.
Mhm.
Um, so there's my quick high level
No,
thought
I love
process.
that, and I deeply appreciate because this is something that I think that I've gleaned information from you through asking you questions, but we've never like sat down and actually talked about
No, we actually
the
don't sit down a lot and talk about like the process of writing outside of in these creator corners. Like we'll
yeah,
we'll
which is why
ask
they're
each
my
other like
favorite part of our episodes.
yeah, we'll ask each other about like how what do you feel about this specific thing or like how I did this specific thing. We don't usually just sit down and talk about like how would you approach doing something like this. Yeah.
Yeah, and so one of the first kind of like little phrases that floats around, I think, for people who are kind of, osmosising knowledge about writing fight scenes. One thing that you've put out to me a number of times is where like the points of impact are. Can you talk a
Oh,
bit
super
about
big. Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's super super important? Can you talk a bit about
yeah.
like what we're looking at in terms of points of impact, what the effect of choosing different points along that
Yeah.
line has?
One thing here is I'll say is that a lot of this does end up resting on the artist. I get very specific, and I love a lot of the artists that I work with are very okay with me getting very specific with fight scenes. There's artists that really don't like that
Mhm.
and really like the freedom to do what they want in fight scenes. I'll get
But
very
it
specific about like
mhm.
the fist comes
It
here
is
and like
also
this is
important to have this knowledge though, so that if you're even if you kind of let your artist go free, you can offer feedback
oh
and
absolutely.
communicate what
And
you
like
want
even
out of the
if
scene.
like I typically will give freedom within the moment, but then I'll have them those big moments, those points of impact where I'll describe very specifically what that needs to be because I think it's very important. And I'll kind of because I don't know exactly which because I use the word points of impact I think in several different contexts, so I'm going to try to cover the bases here. The first one is very much from an art standpoint, which is like if you when you're at the moment of point of impact, where are you hitting it? Is the panel showing the lead in of the strike? Is the panel showing the actual moment of impact, or is the panel showing like the moment right after impact? Those are the three most popular ways you'll see an artist kind of like show a blow: moment before, moment of actual impact, or the moment after. And I think that is hugely important to the way a panel comes across. It's a big thing that certain artists it's why certain artists you'll be like, yes, these are so good at writing fight scenes, and some of you might be like, this doesn't really land with me. My personal opinion is showing the moment before impact feels very lame a lot of the time. But it's very, very popular to show the moment before impact.
Because I
It's something
think
very
that's
common.
also a moment that people like to throw like a quick dialogue balloon in,
Yeah.
like a classic like "This is for my father" type thing.
I'm also big on like you'll see my fight scenes have very little dialogue during the actual fight. Like
Mhm.
so there'll be a talking in the fight scene, but it'll be in moments that make sense. Like, my character won't usually be throwing a punch as they speak, or they won't usually be like speaking as they're being attacked. It'll be like, okay, they knock the person to the ground. Now that person has a line of dialogue before they get up and charge back in. Like, I like it to feel somewhat like a movie where, like, they're not going to talk as they're actually doing the moves a lot of the time, because that just, to me, takes off the reader's concentration, because they're reading the text bubbles instead of actually looking at the moment of impact.
And I think that's something. I think that's also something that really cuts the tension of a fight. Because if you have time, because if you think of a character like Spider-Man or like Nightwing, even often, if you have time to be throwing little jabs when you're throwing jabs, that's probably because you're relaxed. You're in your element. Once things heat up for characters like that, who are normally very chatty during their combat, they'll often shut the fuck up. And
really
that's
good
very important for
making know when to pull the quips to make an action scene more intense. And I think it's just a lot of things, like it's something in the comic book medium that a lot of people don't think about. They're like, oh, well, they're fighting, but also now I have this space where I could throw more dialogue, and they're not actually thinking about, like, whenever you're writing a comic book, yes, you should be thinking about how it comes across on the page, but you should be thinking about, like, in the world, what's actually happening. And if your answer is, oh, I don't know how this dialogue's actually happening here in these moments, because even, like, a lot of times you'll have a page of action, and if you think about it, it's actually maybe 10 seconds in the real world. It's like, oh, here's punch, punch, punch. It's like, how long does that take to do? Boom, done. It's like, you can't have long lines of dialogue in that. Like, it doesn't make conceivable sense.
Yeah, it's the old, like, D&D adage of, it's a game where it takes 6 seconds to walk 3 hours and 3 hours to fight for 6 seconds.
Yeah. So, I think that you got to think very realistically. I think about my fights. I think this is one of the main benefits I had from, like, film school and learning, kind of screenwriting and doing and kind of choreographing fights and stuff like that, is which might be another thing that helps my fight scenes, is, like, I think about them a lot from that standpoint, and then kind of try to transcribe, like, okay, I'm thinking about this real fight, and how do I then put that onto the page? And again, the artist is going to have a lot to do with it, but I try to find the big moments and then let the artist kind of do their thing in between those big moments.
So that's kind of one look at moment of impact. You're talking about big moments, and I think that, again, this is somewhere that you really thrive, and I simply do not. Like, you'll notice if you read any Katie Markham books, it is not combat, like, especially not fucking mano-y-mano combat. No.
Showdown, man.
Good what? Shit. Yeah, you love that shit, and you're so good at it. And I'm like, no, they're gonna like, there will be a dinosaur or something that'll make it interesting, because my fight writing won't be interesting. Or, like,
she's really underselling herself a bit here, guys. Let's
Hey, no, I'm not, and I'm gonna put you on the spot right now. Name one mano-y-mano fight scene of mine that you have ever read. That's right. I don't fucking write them, man.
I bet you were selling yourself room, and you're like, I'm not good at it, so I'll throw in a dinosaur or something. Like, you didn't.
No. That's also true. The start of my favorite draft. I'm so bad about making 1,000 drafts for a story when I don't know where the story is going. But my favorite draft for Celestial Chivalry starts with a bunch of alien dinosaurs on the moon eating people. Because it's like, there we go. That's interesting. Nobody's going to say that it wasn't exciting.
Yeah,
but talking about
Katie shooting on herself.
Fair enough. Talking about the like, important moments in a fight. You, as someone who, wrestling fan, actual fighter, lots of practice with fight writing, what do you think makes one of those impactful moments? And I want to specifically reference something we were actually talking about just with the Boy Wonder in the pull list. You were mentioning that the fight didn't feel like it had that same kind of momentum that we saw in Erica Schultz's Daredevil, which had like really great progression in the fight. What do you think are just like a handful of kind of examples of moments of progression, or things that make the fight feel like it's moving along?
The big things have to change. It can be your like setting, which is what Daredevil did a lot. It was like, okay, here they come in this train car, that's their first encounter, and then she gets away in it, and then we'll move on to the next like area, because a changing in scenery can often change who kind of has the advantage, and that's kind of a big thing. And that's the other big thing, like changing who has the advantage, and like in a clear way. It's not like, oh, this one throws a punch and he got a good couple shots in, and now the other guy will just like make a clear logical reason for the shifting. Maybe it's your bad guy does something a little bit dirty, you know, like, oh, you know, he plays kind of what do you call it? God, there's a word for what you play, like, what's the animal called? Oh God, there's an animal that you would say that they're playing like an animal that is weak or whatever. So they're pretending to be like vulnerable, and then
An armadillo.
Really no, there's a word.
Possum.
I don't know. Possum, thank you. Yeah, playing possum. So they're playing possum, and then you kind of use that, and they'll take advantage, and then you can have the villain in control for a lot of it. I mean, a lot of fights are going to have your villain in control for a lot of it, and so I also think it's important to, like, first you have to derive the point of the fight. Is this your big hero beats villain fight? Because that needs to be structured very differently than like your first encounter. You know, either villain gets away or villain almost kills the hero and the hero barely gets away. And kind of defining your point is very important, because you kind of start there and you go, okay, we need to end up here. How do I get there in a way that isn't just, you know, they fight and then we end up there? And like I said, something changing is big, and I tend to land on like something. It needs to be the perfect blend of like, when you think of that big moment that's going to change the course of the fight, it needs to be a blend of changing things, badass,
yeah,
and surprising.
Oh,
like those are the elements you need. It can't be something that your reader is absolutely going to expect. So this character that hasn't been there in several issues shows up. Boom. There's your surprise. Somebody who maybe, you know, you didn't know if they were dead or not shows up. Boom. Surprise. Whatever the hell it is. I very often go to the well of another character like showing up to save somebody, because I think that that's such a fun moment. I might overuse that, so don't overutilize that yourselves. But something that really changes the game. Sometimes it's the other, like, if you have a team, it's the other team member coming over, or it's either the other team member being in danger, and then your hero has to divert some of their attention to help that person, and then they also end up being on the defensive because of that.
Which I think is a pretty classic villain thing of like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, set off explosions on this building. You better go save those people, I mean, Flash, and I'm gonna get away.
You want examples? I always like to go to TV because it's just more common that somebody will have actually, you know, watched it than have read the very specific comic I might be thinking of. Go to the finale of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Maybe the most famous fight from Avatar: The Last Airbender is Zuko versus Azula. Azula diverts the lightning at Katara. Zuko has to essentially sacrifice himself to save her. Boom! There's your big change. Now we don't even have the same two people fighting.
Yeah.
Now your big change isn't that all of a sudden Zuko went from seeming like he was probably going to win to, you know, now he's going to lose. It's he's out, and now it's Katara in the fight. That's a huge change. That's a huge way to make it not just be they fight for X number of minutes and then, you know, it ends. Just do something that is going to actually change things. That your fight isn't in the same place it was a second ago. I think that there's a big time to look at character too. It's like, okay, who is my character here? What makes sense logically for them? Like, are they a character who's maybe going to be scared? So maybe you have a moment where they're like really begging because maybe it was their friend or something. So like you have that moment where maybe they're begging the other person to stop, and like you get the moment of hesitation or something. That can be your big moment. A moment of hesitation, and then like one of their other friends comes in and takes this person out, and then your hero's like, no, I was getting through to them. Why would you do that? Like something to bring in tension and change and badassness and a cool moment all at the same time. It sounds more daunting than it is. Like you just kind of find what makes sense for the characters and what will get you to where you want the fight to end. Because every big moment should be leading to the climax of your fight.
That is incredibly insightful. I am so glad to be talking about this. Now I do have more questions. The last like big one that I had in mind for this topic is actually very character based. How do you reckon with one, writing different characters fighting differently, and two, similar characters fighting similarly but not boringly. Does that make sense? The question.
Yes. So I'm gonna say the first big thing is like the like genre is gonna matter a lot for this. Like superheroes versus like practical fighting versus like
Mhm.
magic or whatever is gonna be kind of different. But kind of the first thing is with powers, it's very easy if they have different powers. Like
Yeah.
it's very easy to go into this makes more sense to be like they have super speed, so they can be in and out, and like and then this person's just really strong. And so I'm gonna maybe sidestep the superhero one because I think that's more self-explanatory.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna talk more about either superheroes with the same powers, or more classic fighting. Um, I'm a little bit of like fighting geek, so I will sometimes go into like, okay, this person's gonna fight like more in Krav Maga, and this person's gonna fight more like in kind of a Taekwondo base. The other thing I'm gonna say is once again something that relies heavily on the artist. Like as much as I can write things a bit differently, if
Right.
the artist draws them all striking and doing things in the same way, it's gonna look very samey. Versus if the artist knows like, okay, this person's gonna be much more like strong and impactful with their strikes, and their base is always gonna be in the same place and the other person's going to be like jumping up every time he punches. You can write some of that stuff in too, but it's going to be on the artist to actually communicate it. But I think a big thing is going to be like, okay, do you have your like character fighting kind of on their front step? Are they like going at this person? Are they your like Jason Todd angry boy? Like I'm gonna fuck this person up. I don't care if it makes no logical sense, and I should know that I'm gonna lose. I'm just gonna get in there. And I'm gonna beat the shit out of this person. Or are they like a more smart like okay, Tim Drake type, like, I'm outmatched. How do I, find
Just
the like,
assuming Tim is outmatched in any fight.
yeah. How do I find what's kind of wrong with them and pick at it and find my advantage? So you have like a smart fighter. It's very, I think I talked about this at some point when we were talking about characterization things. As much as you should never be looking at a character just as one trait, I think it is very helpful in some of these moments to pull them back to their main trait or at least their main trait in that moment. Like you can be a character who's usually very like together and smart, but in this moment they're pissed off. They found out that this is the person who like killed their mother or whatever, and they are not thinking clearly. Distill them in this moment to anger. Have them fight angry because that's what matters in this moment. And then like, okay, maybe this character is terrified. Like this thing just came out. It's like this monster thing. Have them fight scared. And like as you start thinking about it, your mind should be very clearly starting to put together like what would fighting angry look like? Okay, wild strikes, not in control of your emotions. What does fighting scared look like? Trying to get away, constantly running, and maybe it's snatching you and it's grabbing you and it's pulling you back. So distilling the main, again, it should never be the only thing that you have, but distilling the kind of that trait of like, okay, this person fights a little bit more angry. Look at the Ninja Turtles, honestly, a great way to look at it. Leonardo fights very smart, dedicated, to the actual like form of the martial art. Michelangelo fights a little wild, a little comedic in there. He's having fun with it. He's being a little bit crazy, unpredictable. Raphael, he's angry. This man is trying to kill you. Donatello, very smart, very calculated, kind of trying to keep you at a distance. He knows when it's good to go in. And that's another thing. You can look at like their weapons or their powers. I said a little bit with the powers with the superheroes, but you can look at their weapons too. Or
that's actually
going
to bridge into my last question there. Weaponry is obviously very important to a fight. I'm actually going to divert before we do that because I'm still so curious about this question. I just wanted to cut you off before you jumped into weaponry so that we don't head into to that yet. So with something like, I keep referencing this most recent episode issue of Daredevil because I think that
it's so
Eric Schultz writes fighting so well. And genius fight. The artist that she's paired up with, whether it's Marco Cicchetto or
Woman Without Fear, issue
it's not
2.
Cicchetto.
It's not Cicchetto. Cicchetto was on Gang War or whatever. Who's
Cicchetto was for Gang War.
Yeah.
I think it's Marco something, or is it Marco Cicchetto? It's Michael Dowling.
Michael Dowling, yeah. It's just genius fight writing, fantastically illustrated by Michael Dowling, and it's really very smartly just breaking the fight into different moments and different moments of advantage, and then the ending of that fight is very smart in like it's your typical samurai movie moment of like, oh, they threw everything they had and it didn't work, and then just the sudden like choop,
And
Though
that's the
she has
moment that
to
I
throw
wanted
like
to
an
zero in
thing.
on.
Yeah, it's
With
fantastic. I'm also a big fan of Japanese film, and I
Mhm.
studied Japanese film in college, so I'm a big fan of the samurai fight scene too. Very different than the way that I write my fight scenes, but that was carved right out of old school samurai movie moment.
Right, such a classic thing where she like throws a series of very fast punches and then his
Yeah,
entire Punisher armor falls away. What do you think
yeah,
are other like kind of iconic uh moves that you can have in your arsenal for your character to whip
yeah.
out?
I have a few. I have one that I go to, or that I've gone to a few times. It's in the first issue of Julius, which hasn't come out yet, but it is a creator-owned series that I spent a lot of my time on, which is the like sword through the back of through the chest, and then blood comes out of the mouth. Like that's a
Mhm.
classic thing of. And here's your if you want my like real blame fight. It's not how it works in movies and fiction most of the time. It's how I use it because I like it to be more accurate. If blood comes out of their mouth, they're dead. Like that character cannot come. That means that your heart or your internal organs have been destroyed.
If you
You do
want
not get to
blood coming
live.
out of their mouth,
Yeah,
punch him in the
they're dead.
teeth.
Like yeah, like if they are if it's some sort of internal stabbing and blood comes out of their mouth, they are not living. So just understand that maybe if you want it to be realistic in terms of action. That's a big one. Your most famous and like classic one is just the classic punch across the face moment right after impact, spitting out, or maybe a tooth coming out, or a retainer coming out, something flying out of the mouth as they've been punched. Sometimes a chunk of the helmet coming off,
Mhm.
like if they're wearing a helmet. It's that classic post punch moment, face kind of smushing toward camera, toward reader, and something flying toward the reader. That's another classic one. That one I use a ton. A lot of people use that one a ton because
Mhm.
it's a good classic. Um, there's your classic beheading. That's
We
always a good
love a
one.
beheading.
Um, Let me think. Is there another? You've got your not like clear thing, but you've got your like essentially like multiple figure in the same panel fight thing where you show your fighter fighting a large amount of people, and so you do it in like a splash page instead of in like multiple panels, and you just draw the main character like a bunch of times
Yeah,
so they can fight everybody. It's in the first issue of Birds of Prey
I
actually.
was literally about to
That
pull that.
series.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's cool. It's also in Julius the Warehound issue 1. So whenever that comes out, I use all these tricks in that because that was a pretty long fight scene. Not my best written fight scene, but we'll come back to that. But anyway, yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. I would honestly watch movie fights from like a lot of the greats of doing action. Shang-Chi is a great film to watch for that. Whether you love or hate Zack Snyder, got some great fight choreography in his films.
We love
Um,
throwing a sink.
yeah, we love throwing a sink. Everything but the kitchen sink, nah, and the kitchen sink.
But that is
And
a good
there's
enough
more.
segue then to
Yeah,
weaponry, kind of.
yes,
Using the sink as a weapon, why not?
love weaponry.
Oftentimes, your characters will not be going full mono e mono. Um, and I know that we're running quite long in this creator corner here, so
Yeah,
we'll kind of try to hit very briefly. I want to hit
yeah.
3 different stages.
Okay,
First stage being like melee weapon,
yeah,
second stage being kind of ranged weapon, and third stage being like kind of magic or power
yeah, yeah. Weapon
utilized.
slash powers. You can do the like, opposite of the character, but I think that makes fight scenes much harder to write. Um, Typically you want it to match your character. I talked about the Ninja Turtles already, like in their fight styles, but their weapons match it too. You give the angry guy the pointy things. You give the classic martial artist this katana. You give the guy who's maybe a little bit worse of a fighter the long bow staff so he can keep his distance. You give the wild one the nunchucks that flail around. Like you want it to match that personality, whether it's powers, whether it's melee. It's very important to the way that you're going to be able to write fights if it matches their personality, because otherwise you're going to be kind of tug of warring between, do I match the way they're fighting to the weapon or to the personality? You want to be
Mhm.
able to do both. I think
Yeah.
that's really important.
And so when you have something like a sword fight, do you approach that any differently than you would like a hand-to-hand fight?
Sword fights are kind of a unique beast.
And I think part of
I'd
the
say
big part
yeah,
of this question is
yeah,
when it's less so sword fight and more so deadly weapon fight, and then we'll jump to like gunfight and ranged
Yes
fight.
and no, because I'd actually say something like blunt weapons are going to be much more similar to the way you write like punching fight scene.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's really like sharp or like it because it's anything that they can't like block with a body part or like grab onto. You have to write it a little bit differently because like you can catch a punch, you can also catch a bat, or you
Yeah.
can like block a bat, or you can hit a bat. Like a sword, you can't do that with. So you're gonna play a little bit differently with like a sword or a knife or anything like that. Knives, I really like writing knife combat because knives are really really fun. Watch Winter Soldier. The knife fight in Winter Soldier is very famous for that reason. It just shows you the cool things you can do with knives because they're so close and so deadly, and it's just a lot of like manipulation. That's the other thing. Grabbing wrists and kind of like like grabbing in general is big in a fight. A grab can be really really cool. Like you can grab somebody and then you can have a moment where they can talk or where they can struggle, and that's a really cool thing. But yeah, like knives allow for like a lot of like changing the weapon back and forth, which I'm a big fan of. I like single weapon two fighter fights. I think it's one of the coolest things.
Oh yeah.
You can do it with a gun too. A lot of times it's like you'll see it with the gun where like the magazine's out of it, and so
Mm-hmm.
like they're fighting and like one of them's trying to load it and the other one takes it. Mad Max Fury Road has a
Oh
phenomenal
yeah.
fight that's like that. So yeah,
And to kind of piggyback off of that, just to
yeah.
come from my most of my combat experience comes from running D&D, which seems a little silly as a branch here, but
Yeah,
the big thing that I try to keep in mind with any D&D combat, anytime that I'm planning combat, because I don't want it to be boring fight, is having like secondary objectives. Like obviously primary objective is win the fight, but secondary objective, get the knife. Secondary objective, save the person. Secondary
yeah.
objective, I don't know, escape. Like
No, I'm
there's
glad you
all
said
sorts
that.
of
Yeah,
ways that you can add to a fight to make
absolutely.
the actual like kind of set piece of the fight more
No,
exciting.
100%. I'm glad you said because one of the things that I challenge myself to try to think of as often as possible when at least when writing like the big climax fight scenes, which are
Mm-hmm.
like your heroes beat the villains, is how can I write this that isn't just hero ends up being better than villain and wins? Like what is that moment of like, okay, this side character has to get down their shield, or that there's your very video gamey
Yeah,
example.
what
But
is the
like
win
some
condition?
yeah, some like thing that's like, how does my hero win this fight? That doesn't just. I'll give an example from a book that I wrote that I don't know if it's ever going to come out. Um, but I had a fight scene in it, and the way that I ended that fight was with the hero, kind of very much getting the advantage, but then the villain just being like, "Fuck it, I don't care," and just taking out a lighter that he was meaning to light the place on fire after he left, and just lighting it on fire with all of them inside of it, and just everything going up. And now it becomes, how do we escape?
Yeah.
Alive. And it's like, yeah, he beat him, but there was this secondary bit to it that wasn't just, I won the fight and it's over. It's like, no, now this place is coming down and it's on fire and it's scary and it's intense. So
And I
yeah,
think
I
a
think
great
that
example of
yeah,
similar setup there is we just recently read Rogue Sun, and the final fight of that book is so phenomenal. They're trying to keep New Orleans from being destroyed. They're trying to like reckon with their family dynamics. There are so many other things going on in that fight, but the fight part
yeah.
of it is also super badass.
No, that's really cool. And we're like the arguing and the like fight between the parents is more important than like the physical fight.
Mhm.
So that's a really cool way that they handle that. But yeah, I just try to find my overarching point. What I just said is just try to find a way to end it that isn't just hero beats villain, unless you were like building something that's going to be a cool moment of like
Mhm.
there's absolutely, I think anime has proven that this is like still a thing that people are here for, is like train and get powerful enough to just now you can beat the person. And like I'm still a sucker for like, okay, learn how to counter that move or learn how to stop the villain's like big thing that they
Learn how to
nobody can beat
redirect the
them because of.
lightning.
Yeah, I love that shit. It's really really cool. Like there's the Batman TMNT, the movie version of Batman TMNT, has like Shredder doing this like mystical martial art blow that in the first fight is how he beats Batman. And Batman's like, I've never seen anything before. And the Turtles tell him like, oh yeah, only two martial artists in the world, Splinter and Shredder, can do that. And so Batman now in the second fight has to look out for that, and when he sees that coming, he counters it, and then Batman's able to win their second encounter. And it's I'm a sucker for that thing, like a logical reason to beat them because you figured out how to beat the thing that beat you the first time. It's simple, but it works.
But
really
so satisfying.
Yeah.
I don't know that gunfighting is exciting enough to take up any more time. It obviously can be, but you know,
fun things with the gun is my thing. Like that thing where like if the magazine's out, like something like that where you can make hand to hand with a gun is going to be more interesting than just shooting back and forth.
Exactly,
Here's my quick tip. My quick one tip.
And I'm going to say, with the notable exception of duels, we love a duel, but that's not really a fight. That's fun. More so just there to be a segue into our little outro here, because this coming week, next week, we'll be pulling Ain't No Grave, which is Cowboy Book, which is how Duel became a segue. Flawless. I don't know that it has any duels in it. Maybe she'll duel with the devil. I hope she does.
I don't think.
We have not yet had any duels now.
No, let's
she's mostly escape style combat. She's mostly trying to get away from places.
Yes.
So we've got Ain't No Grave number 5 coming to you next week. Continuation of my probably favorite series going on right now. And then a close contender. We've got the Pedestrian number 2, which I'm also incredibly excited about. And then speaking of all of the Turtles, as much as we were speaking of them, we've got the new TMNT series. Number 2 is coming out this coming episode, but because it was part of our little SDCC break, we're going to be reading both issues 1 and 2. Mainly discussing number 2. Be careful, there will be spoilers for issue 1. But those are all going to be in next week's episode.
It's going to be the first time we're ever reading a TMNT book as it comes out, so
yeah,
I'm very excited for that. And it's Jason Aaron. So it's Jason Aaron. Off-World is leading to a close. We're going to keep Jason Aaron in our
sights,
in our hearts, and in our poll lists.
Yes.
With TMNT. So that's very exciting. But that is of course not all we have. This past Saturday we had a bonus episode. It's the Rogue Sun bonus episode.
Yes,
of course. We'll link the Rogue Sun bonus episode. You should check that out. But this Saturday we are of course going to be doing the Strange Saturday Super Show. One of our favorite things here at the Script Heroes podcast, and we are going to be doing, I think, our first ever sequel in the Strange Saturday Super Show, as we do the second volume of Hack Slash by Tim Seeley. And this volume 2 composes the story arcs Land of Lost Toys and Slice Hard. So we're super excited. Hack Slash is so freaking good and so much fun. So be on the lookout for that, and hopefully we will see you guys checking out our bonus content. But if not, we'll see you next week. Comic Geeks.